Well, I'm not going to categorize it as an emergency podcast per se because I wanted to take a day or so to let all of this sink in. But still, this is a special place. This is a place for our feelings. Welcome to a special edition of Notsam Wrestling, where I want to take a look at one specific part of Monday's WWE Raw. And that specific part, after everything that happened on that show, is, of course, the message that was delivered by the Wyatt Sicks. So, Chad Gable makes his return, and Chad Gable is jumpy, and Chad Gable has security around him, and we see what looks like stitches, the wound that has been taken care of on his head where the blood was on last week's episode of Monday Night Raw. And, you know, obviously we jumped to very extreme conclusions with Chad Gable, but the idea that a WWE superstar would be unconscious and bloody and then be able to return to the ring a week later is something that a precedent has been really well set. That's not at all something that has never happened before in the WWE. So Chad Gable goes into his match and he ends up winning his Money in the Bank triple threat qualifier. And upon winning, we get the boom, boom, boom. The lights go out in sections and that tone starts boom, 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 and Gable starts freaking out. He doesn't want a repeat of what happened last week. Now, just like SmackDown security had been positioned by the commentary desk with a now alone Michael Cole because The Miz had already returned to the locker room, and the Abby the Witch inspired character makes her way into the ring, kind of creeping and approaches Chad Gable, who slinks into the corner and then immediately escapes. And then this entity turns around and starts walking towards the commentary table. When she gets to the commentary table, she has a box that she delivers to Michael Cole. And when you look at the commentary table, the security have immediately been laid out. They're draped over the commentary table. And we don't know exactly what happened to these security guards. We don't know if there was some kind of chemical. We don't know if there were other members of the Wyatt Sicks that came out and jumped him. We really don't know. But Michael Cole is by himself, looking terrified as he should be. And he accepts this box given to him by this character. And then she ends up leaving the area. And we follow her walking through the entire crowd in what was a really cool looking shot. Then Michael Cole, and by the way, it felt like, you know, with all the madness and the violence and the macabre, the cynicism, for lack of a better term, of this group, that they were a villainous group, but that's going to be tough because the minute the power went out, the minute the piano tone started going, the crowd went absolutely bonkers. And that's what's kind of expected to happen, I think, when you're dealing with something as cool as the presentation of this Wyatt Sicks. So Michael Cole is now on camera, and he acknowledges this box. He says the box is addressed to Pat McAfee, who was not on commentary. Interesting that the box was addressed to Pat McAfee specifically. No mention of McAfee was in the video itself. Maybe this was in response to the static and the messaging that had been going on Friday and Monday on Pat McAfee's show. Maybe it was just something that they wanted to make clear to him. Maybe they wanted to show how much not a joke this was. I don't know. But Michael Cole says, however, it does say to open, so I'm going to open it anyway. He opens it up, and there's a VHS tape inside with a label on it that says, "Play Me." Michael Cole says, for all you kids watching, this is a VHS, which, as somebody who was big into the tape trading world for the end of my high school years, it was very funny to hear Michael Cole say that. As a matter of fact, Michael Cole was working in the WWE while I was making dubs of VHS tapes. But he gives it off to a PA who's going to send it to the truck and figure out if they can play it or not. And the show continues, which I thought this little touch, that was just one of those little touches that was so cool, that not only was it not just like, hey, they have a video to play. Well, how did they get the video on? Who did they give the video to? It's like, nope, this is exactly how the message was delivered. Now that it's on a VHS tape, so if they just played the video, why does it look like it's VHS? Well, now we see that it's on tape. Well, how did they play the tape? It took them 20, 25 minutes, however long it was on that show, a couple of segments before they got back to Michael Cole, who had said they'd figured out, they'd found a VCR that they could play this tape out of. And they go, so here it is. And they play the tape, and we get the blue screen, and we get the staticky, and what we see is Uncle Howdy. And we see Uncle Howdy's face very close up. We see the detailing. We see the detailing in the face. We see the mask, the dreadlocks, everything. And Uncle Howdy's voice is altered. Every time Uncle Howdy speaks, there are electronic effects that are going on his voice. But he starts talking, and he starts talking about how do you feel about the loss, or how do you feel since the loss, or something about the loss. Do you remember who you are? Do you feel forgotten? These are the questions that he has for the subject that he's interviewing. And when we go to the other camera, we see that, and this is that first jolt. There are probably maybe three jolts where it's like, oh, what are we dealing with here? Because the first jolt comes when the camera looks, and it's Bo Dallas, Taylor Rotunda, brother of Bray Wyatt, that is sitting in that chair. The man who is playing Uncle Howdy is the person who Uncle Howdy is speaking to. So immediately I'm like, okay, I'm sitting back in my chair like, what are we doing here? And Bo basically says he doesn't feel like he's anybody. He feels he's nobody. And then Uncle Howdy has that quote that I've been getting in my app mentions, that quote that I think we're going to be repeating when Uncle Howdy says, "There you are." Like he's been waiting for Bo Dallas to realize that he's been stripped down to this. And I go, okay, is this like a supernatural, psychological thing? When Bo says, "I'm nobody," and Howdy says, "There you are," I go, okay, is this Howdy character stripping Bo down to nothing so that Howdy can encompass Bo? And then Uncle Howdy looks at Bo and says, "How did it feel when your brother died?" And I'm like, wow. Now we're really getting into this. There's no like, oh, this is really interesting. Like where I would have a conversation with somebody that I'm watching with, going like, well, you see what this is based on is his brother, blah, blah, blah. This is now right there on the surface. This is not being hinted at. This is not, kind of understood. This is something that we're putting right out there. That we're not talking about Bray Wyatt and Uncle Howdy. Uncle Howdy is talking about Taylor Rotunda and Wyndham Rotunda. Bo Dallas and Bray, for lack of a better term, but these human beings. Now what we're getting in this world of everything counts, rule number 3, is this idea that everything that we saw in that incredible Wyatt documentary, and go back and watch the Bray Wyatt documentary, because it feels more and more like that Bray Wyatt documentary was the foundational piece of what this story that we're telling is. And the Bray Wyatt documentary was as absolutely real as it gets. And Bo starts saying, it felt like nothing was going to matter again. So already at this point, this is the second jolt now. How did it feel when your brother died? And in 2 minutes of television time, we've established that I know you thought this was going to be some spooky supernatural thing, but we're flat out telling you, Uncle Howdy, this is Bo Dallas, the real person. If you've been watching for a length of time, you know who he is. But if you didn't know, he's also Bray Wyatt's real life brother. And you go, whoa. The third jolt comes in with the next question. When Uncle Howdy says something that the most pessimistic, cynical of wrestling fans have said on Twitter, this is literally pulling it right from, what are your criticisms of this angle? Well, let me pull those in, and I'm going to now put them on screen And these characters are going to answer for them. Uncle Howdy says, don't you think you're exploiting your brother's legacy? And it's like, whoa. There it is right there. We're now acknowledging that all of these characters are based on the legacy of Bo/Taylor's brother, Bray Wyatt. And now we're as real as it gets. And this to me, and Bo starts talking, and the things that he is saying are things that were purely echoed in that documentary that I was just talking about. He starts talking about how he wanted to be just like his brother. It's all he's ever wanted to do. That he worked and he worked and he worked so that he and his brother could be at the top at the exact same time. And he says, we were going to rule together. We were right there. And then it was taken away from me. That's real life. That's real life, talking about the real journey that Taylor has been on. That's real life, talking about the connection that Taylor had to Wyndham. And Taylor, Bo, is telling this story to himself in a mask. Somehow, we've taken the most sort of fantastical, cinematic elements of professional wrestling and combined them with the absolute most utter real elements of wrestling. That just when you go, I don't believe in all this hocus pocus stuff, the hocus pocus stuff is what drags you right down to absolute hardcore reality. This is real life. Bo says nobody has felt the way that I've felt. Nobody feels the way that I feel. Nobody has experienced that loss. And then he starts saying they wanted to forget about all of us. We made them remember. And when he says they wanted to forget about all of us, the question is, does he mean that the WWE tried to forget about all of the superstars that are portraying the characters that we see in the Wyatt Sicks? Which is potential, right? Joe Gacy, Eric Rowan, Nikki Cross, Dexter Lumis, and Bo Dallas? Or is he saying, because he talks about Bray becoming a mausoleum, is he saying that as everybody pays homage, respects, and bows down to the memory of Bray Wyatt, that they've forgotten about everything in Bray's orbit, that they've forgotten about all of these elements that Bray created, all of these characters that Bray created, all of the messaging that Bray put forth in these characters, in the WWE. Is that what we've forgotten? We don't know. Are we talking about the people portraying the characters, or are we talking about the characters themselves? Or, much like this whole dialogue, is it both? The same way we're seeing Uncle Howdy talk in these sort of mysterious rhymes and still not being sure exactly what type of essence this is being combined with the most real way that you'll ever see a superstar portrayed in Bo Dallas. Is that what this Wyatt Sicks is all about? On one end, the characters and the stories and how that's being forgotten as Bray is being remembered? Or is it that WWE has forgotten about all of these superstars as they're remembering Bray? I don't know. But it could be both. And that could be the theme of what we're seeing, because then the reveal comes and we see Howdy and Bo in the two shot. So you see them both in the room, but if you really look, You can see that it's dimly lit, but in between them is a door. It's a dark door. But this isn't the door that they walked in when they showed up on Raw last week. This isn't the door that Bray Wyatt had at Extreme Rules when he came back. If you look at this door, it's clearly the architecture of the original Firefly Funhouse. That it appears, to me anyway, that Uncle Howdy and Bo Dallas are having this conversation inside whatever's left of the Firefly Funhouse. And as we know, or as I've said, I always interpreted the Firefly Funhouse to be this place that existed inside Bray's head, where Bray was working out all of his insecurities and all of the things that people criticized and all of this that existed inside that Firefly Funhouse. That was what Bray was wrestling with in his mind, and that's why what would come out of the Firefly Funhouse was the Fiend. You know, sometimes it would be Bray coming out of the Firefly Funhouse, and that's when everything was okay. That's when he had everything like, okay, we're still smiling. But when all those elements took over, that's when the Fiend came out of the Firefly Funhouse and into real life. That's why when John Cena went into the Firefly Funhouse at WrestleMania 36, it was his insecurities that have plagued him throughout his entire career that were haunting him in the Firefly Funhouse. So now we're looking at Bo Dallas or Taylor Rotunda inside what appears to be the Firefly Funhouse. And who is he talking to but an Uncle Howdy that appears to be manipulating him? And it goes back to my original premise that maybe what we've seen in the past is Uncle Howdy and Mercy the Buzzard and Huskus the Pig and Ramblin' Rabbit and Abby the Witch and all of these characters, they were all being subdued. Bray was there to control them, and sometimes they'd bust through, but other times Bray was able to hold them back. And now Bray's gone. So now all of this is still there. And that's why all of this knows no other way than to completely run amok and to remind everyone of who and what they are. It was so incredible. I mean, it was, for me, I love horror movies, and what I always loved about what Bray did with The Fiend in the Firefly Funhouse was he brought horror movies to life. Wrestling is this form of entertainment that really only exists at its best when it's live, and not only live on television, but live in front of thousands of people in an arena, which means everything that you do, you have to be able to do live. When you do it through camera tricks, it never has the same effect. And Bray bringing The Fiend in was the first time I'd ever seen Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Leatherface come to life and enter into this world. So this horror movie world within this world of wrestling was able to mesh into the real world that we live in. And now I'm seeing that play out through this Wyatt Sicks. And it's being played out in this truly honest way, where they're dealing with the very real reality of what their foundation is, where they come from, what their motivations are. And they are hearing what everyone is saying. They are referencing what everyone says. And that's something we really haven't seen before. I think it's really cool. I can't wait to see what happens next. And I love this ride that we are on. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the podcast if you're listening on Spotify or Apple. ratings, reviews, do the whole thing, leave comments, hit likes, and we will be back for more Notsam Wrestling very, very soon. Thank you, everybody.